What is up, guys? Stark here. I am back for another Fate video, and in today's video I am going to be doing another character spotlight, or more precisely a re-spotlight. And for today we're going to be taking a second look at Fionn. So Fionn is rated up on the banners for the New Year's event, and that's mainly the only reason why I'm coming back around to do a second spotlight for him. Now, he does have a lot of new buffs that he has gotten since the original video I made. But basically what it comes down to is Fionn is, at this point in time, a really terrible character. He's basically like a meme joke for a lot of the community because of how bad he is. Now, the game has tried very hard to change that and make him a somewhat decent character. So we'll go through his skills and all that stuff like normal and see if he's salvageable in any way. But at base, he's basically a garbage character, and he is going to just, for a lot of people, I think he's going to be more useful as a rare mana prism, but I personally don't believe in that method. I don't believe that any character should be sold unless you have their noble phantasms maxed. But regardless, Fionn will go up to level 80 as he is a 4-star servant, and he will have 12,750 HP and 8,930 attack. This will rank him 78th overall in HP and 140th overall in attack. His star absorption is 89, his star generation is 12.3, and his noble phantasm generation is going to be 0.55% on his attacks and 4% on defense. So the main reason why Fionn is garbage is because of his skill set being extremely lackluster, and the effects just really aren't that good. And they're coupled with really high cooldowns, which we'll see not with this skill, but with his next skill. But as it stands, his first skill is going to increase his own critical star drop rate for 3 turns. So this is a self buff that goes up to 38% at level 10 on a 6-turn charge time. So this will be a decent way to get critical stars to be generated. He doesn't really have a way of absorbing them. His absorption is fairly low, a little bit below average, I would say. So, you know, you do need help in that department, and he has no other way of gaining those stars onto himself. So it basically is a little bit pointless to just have a skill here with increasing star drop rate, but not having any way of getting those stars. And that's the only effect it does. So the stars you generate are going to be going to allies, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when you're only increasing it by 38%, it's really not going to help that much. So Fate decided to go ahead and try and fix that, and in my opinion, they did fix his first skill quite a lot. So there is going to be an upgrade to his first skill, which will up it to Clairvoyance B++, and this will completely overhaul his entire skill, honestly. So his critical star drop rate buff that was only applied to himself will now apply to all allies, and this effect will actually get a buff in percentages going up to 50% at level 10, which is a pretty sizable increase. And then they're going to add an additional effect on top of that, which will increase the noble phantasm gain of all allies for 3 turns. So this will be a 30% increase to noble phantasm gain for 3 turns on a 6-turn charge time still, which is pretty good. I think that's a very good buff to Fionn's first skill. He's an art-centered servant, so having noble phantasm gain on his skill set is going to be very good to help with noble phantasm like refund and spamming. So overall, I do have to admit that getting his first skill buffed up like this is going to be very helpful to any Fionn user out there. Moving on to his second skill. His second skill is going to apply evasion to himself for 1 turn, which has a chance to succeed on each hit. So anytime he's attacked, it has a chance to apply evasion for that 1 turn. He'll also apply target focus to himself for 1 turn, so you're going to make sure you get hit. And then you're also going to decrease the charm resistance against females by 30% for 3 turns. Or by 80% for 3 turns, rather, to himself. So this skill is pretty much awful. There's really no way around it. It's a really bad skill, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people agree. So first off, it has a 12-turn charge time, 10 turns at maximum level, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I honestly can't think of too many other skills, if any skills, that have a 12-turn charge time at base for something like this, where 2 of his effects last for 1 turn, and then his other effect that lasts for 3 turns is a negative effect that actually hurts him more than it helps him. But it gets a 12 turn charge time at start. Even 10 turns at max level, like, that's still really high. Like, I don't understand why they felt the need to give him such a high cooldown on this skill. It's not even good. You know, like, if it was a really good skill, then I could understand why it would have a high cooldown, but it doesn't. You know, if you don't have this skill maxed out, you have a 60% chance to evade the attacks that are coming your way because you have target focus on him. Like, what? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. At max level, though, it is decent for what it does. You do have the target focus and evasion, so you'll be able to basically just tank the entire turn worth of hits and safeguard your team. But the cooldown is just ridiculous. Now, once again, Fate decided to go ahead and fix this skill, thankfully, and buff it up a little bit. So the first three effects stay completely the same. There's no changes there whatsoever. It will add an additional effect, which will increase his own Noble Phantasm gauge. So you'll get a 30% increase to your Noble Phantasm gauge, which is really nice. You can combo that with your Noble Phantasm gain, and help getting your Noble Phantasm charged really fast is going to be very helpful, of course. But the big thing about this skill is they slash the cooldown down. So they brought it down 3 turns, which is big. So they brought it down from 12 turns to 9 turns at max level, or at base level, so 7 turns at max level. So salvageable. They salvaged another one of Finn's skills. So awesome. You know, Finn is becoming into usable territory at this point in time. Of course, you do have to do your upgrades for that. But, you know, the 2 of his 3 skills have upgrades, which is going to be very helpful and turns him into a solid, if not decent, choice for arts teams. And then finally, his 3rd skill is going to increase his own arts card effectiveness for 1 turn. This will be a 40% boost to arts card effectiveness on a 7-turn charge time. It's a pretty simple skill. It does what it needs to do, though, so you get a nice buff there off of that. Honestly, in the future, I could definitely see them upgrading this skill as well. Maybe making this a 3-turn buff, or making it a party-wide buff or something, or giving it an additional effect. Either way, this skill by itself, though, isn't really that bad. It does a good effect, what it needs to do. So the only problem here, it has a 7-turn charge time, which is a bit high considering it lasts for 1 turn. All in all, though, compared to his first 2 base skills, this one is definitely going to be the best of his 3 skills. So for his passives, he does have 2. The first one is Magic Resistance B, which will increase debuff resistance by 17.5%. And his second passive is going to be Divinity D, which will apply damage plus 125. So all in all, for Finn's skills, I am factoring in his buffs into this equation, since he is able to get the buffs. So his skill set, it does start off really, really bad, but it does get better. It does get much better for Finn as the game progresses, as you do his rank up quests. But still, his skill set isn't really like amazing, even with his updates. It's definitely better than it was, but it's not the best. So I'm going to give him 3.5 stars for his skills. So now to take a look at his command card deck and his Noble Phantasm. For his command card deck, he has 2 quick, 2 arts, 1 buster, and the hit counts are going to be 2 on the quick, 2 on the arts, 1 on the buster, and 4 on his extra attack. He has really low hit counts for some reason, which makes no sense to me considering his Noble Phantasm generation isn't that high. So it's going to be pretty hard for him to generate pretty much anything. As far as command chains go, his damage output is going to be Buster Arts, Arts Extra. For your Noble Phantasm generation, you're going to bring in a Support Servant's Arts card and then his 2 Arts cards. And then for critical stars, you're going to have to bring in a Support Servant's Quick card and then his 2 Quick cards. Finn just falls into a really bad situation where he doesn't have a really good deck for what he tries to do, and he really can't make too many Brave Chains, honestly. You will have to, I mean, obviously you can do Brave Chains, but to like benefit him, you need other characters' cards to help him out. His Noble Phantasm is arts though, which is really good. If his Noble Phantasm was like a Buster Noble Phantasm, like, there'd be no helping this character at all. But thankfully for Finn, And the only saving grace for this character is that his Noble Phantasm is an arts card. As it stands, I believe he is the only arts AoE Noble Phantasm in the game. This does not count JP. There are JP servants out there who have AoE Noble Phantasms. I'm thinking of Summer Melt. Vritra has one. She just came out on JP. I believe there's one more. I can't think off the top of my head who it is at this point in time. But as it stands right now, he is, I believe, the only Lancer. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe he is the only Lancer who has an AoE Arts Noble Phantasm. So he does fill that void. It's a very niche role for him to fill, but it is there if you need it, and he will benefit greatly from the meta in the future. So if you do have him, as the game progresses, Arts does become more of a popular meta, and the characters that do come out help support Arts cards. Looking at you, Caster Artoria, she'll definitely help Finn out a lot as far as spamming Noble Phantasms go. But honestly, maybe it's just my bias because I've been playing since day one. I can't see a situation in which I will ever use Finn. Regardless though, what his Noble Phantasm does is it will deal heavy damage to all enemies. This will also apply immunity to mental debuffs to yourself for 3 turns. And then the overcharge effect will decrease the attack of all enemies for 3 turns. So a pretty solid amount of damage there. Like I said, AoE Arts Noble Phantasm, so it can fill that void if you need that to be filled. But yeah, overall, it's just a pretty solid Noble Phantasm. It's nothing crazy. There is an upgrade to his Noble Phantasm, which will up the overall damage it does, which does make it a lot more viable. But still, at the end of the day, it's really not going to be anything groundbreaking. But once again, if you need an Arts AoE Lancer, then I guess Finn's your guy, because he's the only one. Yeah. Decent, solid Noble Phantasm. Solid Noble Phantasm. So as far as damage goes, he is going to get 3.5 stars. He doesn't have really much of anything to increase his overall damage. He has his 3rd skill, which increases Arts card effectiveness, but that's it. So, you know, he's not really going to be doing much damage. And it's kind of a shame because you do need him to do damage for him to be useful because of his Noble Phantasm. If you could get his Noble Phantasm to do some really good damage, then, you know, if you can spam it and wave clear and just refund your Noble Phantasm, then he'd be pretty usable. But as it stands right now, just not going to cut it for damage. As far as critical ability goes, I'm going to give him 3 stars. He does get a nice buff to his 1st skill for the drop rate for your entire team, but that's the only crit ability that he has on his kit. He doesn't have good stats for generating stars. You know, even if you combo in a quick chain, he's not going to generate that many stars. Overall, he's just not very helpful for crits at all. For his Noble Phantasm, I'm going to give him 4 stars. It's a very niche Noble Phantasm that does a solid amount of damage. The additional effects that he gives aren't really that great, but they're not awful either. And it does have the potential to loop with, you know, Arts teams. So you do have to factor that into the equation and, you know, account for that. So he does get a bit of a boost there for that, but overall it's nothing special. So we're going to leave it at 4 stars. For his survivability, he is also going to get 4 stars. If his 2nd skill had a lower cooldown, then, or if it lasted multiple turns or something, it would be really high. But as it stands, it lasts for 1 turn, which is really good. You know, you're going to be able to get basically a turn of like a free turn, because he'll taunt the enemies into attacking him and he'll evade those attacks. So unless the enemy is dishing out like a AoE Noble Phantasm, you should be pretty safe for that turn. But outside of that, he doesn't have any like healing, he doesn't have any guts or anything like that. So can't give him too high of a ranking, but that 2nd skill is very good for defense. And with the upgraded reduction to the cooldown, you know, you might be able to use it multiple times in the same fight, but either way, it's going to be a good skill to use for at least 1 turn of solid defense. And then for support, he is going to get 4 stars as well. His 1st skill gets upgraded into an AoE skill, which increases the drop rate for stars and Noble Phantasm gain for all of your allies, which is really big. We just talked about his 2nd skill, which basically gives you a 1 turn free pass, unless they're using an AoE Noble Phantasm. So that'll obviously help support your team, keep him alive a lot longer. So all in all, you know, that's really good. He can decrease the attack of the enemy's team, so he has a decent amount of support built into his kit, but he's definitely not a support servant by any stretch of the imagination. So overall, that will give him a 3.7 out of 5, and that is a sizable increase to the last video I did. I believe we gave him like a 2.4, 2.5, something like that. So he has certainly gone up, but I still don't think he's where he needs to be yet. But, you know, he's getting there, and with the addition of Caster Artoria, eventually, he's going to be usable. I think there'll be more people who actually use him. I still think there's going to be a lot of people out there who just don't use him because of how bad he was in the past. But he's definitely a lot better than he used to be. You can't take that away from him. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. As far as availability goes, Finn is not a limited time servant, so you can get spooked by him pretty much anywhere. So we don't need to talk about his banners. So I hope you did enjoy the video, and if you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I do have the links below to my Twitter, Twitch, Patreon, and Discord, so feel free to check that out, and I will see you guys next time.
落ちたる神霊をもほふる魔の一撃その身で味わえマクハドゥイン